She kept quiet for nearly 2 years. While the tabloids ran wild, while the rumors circulated, while the world watched her ex-husband step out publicly with his new girlfriend, she said almost nothing. And then, the moment wedding speculation began swirling around Hugh Jackman and Sutton Foster, something shifted. Deborra-Lee Furness finally spoke. And what she said, in just a handful of carefully chosen words, told the entire story that 2 years of silence had been holding back. The word she chose was betrayal. Not heartbreak. Not disappointment. Betrayal. And once you understand the full timeline of this marriage and how it ended, you will understand exactly why that word was the only one she needed. To make sense of where Deborra-Lee Furness is right now, you have to go back to the very beginning of this story, because the beginning is something most people have completely wrong. The popular narrative around Hugh Jackman's marriage always painted him as the devoted husband, the man who stood at podiums and told anyone who would listen that his wife was his greatest gift. But here is the detail that tends to get lost. When this relationship started, Hugh Jackman was not the star. Deborra-Lee was. She had already built a distinguished acting career in Australia long before Hugh Jackman had ever walked onto a professional set. She trained at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. She worked on American television. She came home and earned recognition as one of the most respected performers in her country. In 1988, she won Best Actress at the Australian Film Critics Circle for her lead role in the film Shame. By the time she was cast as the lead in the 1995 television series Corelli, she was a known name with real credibility. Hugh Jackman, by contrast, was 25 years old and fresh out of drama school. Corelli was his first professional acting job. He played a prisoner. She played the psychologist. He was the newcomer. She was the established professional who had already done the work. And yet, within months of meeting her, he was pursuing her with an intensity that she, by her own account, found difficult to navigate. She was 13 years older than him. She had been in the industry long enough to understand exactly what people would say, and she tried to walk away early, telling him the age difference would create problems that love alone could not solve. He talked her out of it. He told her none of that mattered. He told her she was who he wanted. And on April 11, 1996, they were married at St. John's Church in Toorak, Melbourne. She was 40. He was 27. And for the next 27 years, she chose to believe him. What those 27 years actually looked like behind the public image of Hollywood's most devoted couple is something that is only now beginning to come into focus. Because while Hugh Jackman spent those decades becoming one of the most famous actors on the planet, Wolverine, The Greatest Showman, countless Broadway productions and international press tours, Deborra-Lee was building an entirely different kind of life. Not a lesser life. A life shaped by the reality of being the partner whose career had to flex around someone else's global trajectory. The family tried to have children after their wedding. There were IVF treatments. There were miscarriages. They eventually adopted their son Oscar in 2000 and their daughter Ava in 2005. Deborra-Lee did not treat adoption as a consolation prize. She turned it into a cause. She spent years working to reform adoption legislation in Australia, engaging directly with lawmakers and advocates to reduce stigma and improve outcomes for adoptive families. This was not a project connected to Hugh's career or his public profile. It was entirely her own initiative, built from her own platform and her own conviction. She also continued to act when the logistics of their life allowed for it. But the architecture of a marriage where one partner is filming X-Men installments on multiple continents, mounting Broadway revivals, and managing a schedule that belongs to a global franchise, means the other partner makes quiet, uncelebrated compromises. Roles she could not take because the timing conflicted with what the family needed. Projects that required a stability of location she could not guarantee. These are not the kinds of sacrifices that make headlines. They are the accumulated costs of building a life around someone else's career, and they are almost never factored into the public accounting of what a marriage actually costs. Meanwhile, Hugh told the world, consistently, publicly, repeatedly, that Deborra-Lee was everything. That she was the foundation of all of it. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 2021, he posted old wedding photographs with words describing their love as something that had only deepened with time, that being with her was as natural as breathing. A woman who has given the best part of her professional years to making a marriage like that function reads those words and believes them. She makes decisions based on them. She shows up every single day because she trusts that what she has been told, in public and in private, is the truth. Then came The Music Man. Hugh Jackman's Broadway revival began rehearsals in February 2022. His co-star was Sutton Foster, a two-time Tony Award winner and one of the most celebrated performers in American musical theater. The production ran through January 2023, nearly a full year of nightly performances, press appearances, and the particular closeness that develops between lead performers who share a stage every single evening. According to multiple sources and subsequent reporting, the dynamic between Hugh and Sutton during the production became what people inside the show described as an open secret. Cast members reportedly observed an unusual closeness between them backstage. Sutton herself spoke openly during the run about the nightly ritual she and Hugh had developed, time they set aside specifically to talk and connect before going on stage each night. At the time, it read as the kind of warm professional bond that performers often build. Looking back at it now, with everything that followed, it reads very differently. Sources close to Deborra-Lee have indicated that she became aware something had shifted during the production. Her assessment, as relayed through people close to her, was that an emotional connection had developed between her husband and his co-star, regardless of whether anything physical had taken place while the marriage was still formally intact. And for a woman who had been with one person for nearly 3 decades, the distinction between an emotional betrayal and a physical one is considerably less significant than people outside the situation tend to assume. When someone turns away, the turning away is the wound. The specific direction they turn toward comes second. What makes the timeline particularly difficult to sit with is the sequence of public moments around the separation. In April 2023, Hugh posted a public anniversary tribute to Deborra-Lee on social media. In May of that same year, they attended the Met Gala together, walking the red carpet the way they had done for years, presenting the image that had become one of Hollywood's most recognizable. Then, just 4 months later, on September 15, 2023, they released a joint statement announcing their separation after almost 3 decades together. The language of that joint statement was the careful, constructed phrasing of people who have run everything past their publicists. It spoke of a shift in their journey and a desire to pursue individual growth. It sounded measured and mutual. It was designed to say as little as possible while sounding considered. And for nearly 2 years after that statement, Deborra-Lee said almost nothing publicly. She gave one interview, attended a film event in May 2024, and when a journalist asked what the previous year had taught her, offered only that she had learned she was strong and resilient. That answer, given quietly, told you everything about where she actually was, someone still in the middle of surviving something, not yet ready to name what it had been. By the time Deborra-Lee finally broke that silence, the landscape had changed significantly. In October 2024, Sutton Foster filed for divorce from her husband of 10 years, screenwriter Ted Griffin. In January 2025, Hugh and Sutton were photographed together in Los Angeles, their relationship now out in the open and confirmed. Whatever had existed in the space between friendship and something else during The Music Man was now public record. Then came May 2025. Deborra-Lee filed for divorce in New York City on May 23. And with that filing came a statement, her first direct, unambiguous public words about what had happened. She released it to the Daily Mail, and it used language that was the exact opposite of the careful, neutral phrasing of the joint separation announcement nearly 2 years earlier. "My heart and compassion goes out to everyone who has traversed the traumatic journey of betrayal," she said. "It's a profound wound that cuts deep." That word, betrayal, was not accidental. It was not vague. It was chosen by a woman who had waited 20 months to say anything publicly and used her first real opportunity to say exactly what she meant. She did not name Hugh. She did not name Sutton. She did not need to. The context had already written those names for her, and anyone reading the statement knew precisely who and what she was referring to. The divorce was finalized in June 2025. The financial scale of what was being divided reflected nearly 3 decades of accumulated wealth, built during years when Deborra-Lee was beside him, raising their children, relocating for his career, providing the stable domestic foundation that allows a person to focus entirely on becoming one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. Since the divorce, the situation has continued to evolve in ways that have added layers to Deborra-Lee's grief. Hugh and Sutton began making increasingly prominent public appearances together. Then came the 2026 Met Gala. For 27 years, the Met Gala had been something Hugh and Deborra-Lee attended together. It was, by all accounts, one of the events she genuinely looked forward to, a rare occasion of shared glamour in a marriage where the glamour more often belonged to him than to both of them. Hugh attended the 2024 event alone, which was already a visible marker of where things stood. Then in May 2026, he walked the carpet with Sutton Foster for the first time, their appearance together fueling speculation, still unconfirmed at the time of writing, that an engagement may have already taken place or was imminent. Sources close to Deborra-Lee described the visual of Hugh and Sutton at the Met Gala as deeply painful. "Of course it burns to see Hugh there with Sutton on his arm," a source told Woman's Day. "That was always their special night of nights and one of the few she actually enjoyed." The fan reaction online reflected a broader public sentiment. Comments on social media described the optics as disrespectful. Many fans expressed that they had lost respect for Hugh as a result. One widely shared comment read simply, "Forever Team Debbie over here." Deborra-Lee did not respond directly. Instead, she liked an Instagram post that read, "Sometimes the universe removes someone from your life because they don't deserve to be in your future." And on Kerry Washington's promotional post for the television series Imperfect Women, which carried the caption "You cannot trust anybody, ever," Deborra-Lee commented, "Hilarious, so true." Neither response named anyone. Both landed with absolute precision. There are also reports that have circulated about the possibility of a memoir. According to multiple sources and reporting by Rob Shooter, Deborra-Lee has been in discussions with publishers about a book covering her marriage, her divorce, and her experience navigating the aftermath. She was reportedly spotted in New York meeting with a prominent publisher, triggering what industry circles described as a competitive bidding situation. A friend was quoted as saying she is reclaiming her narrative, adding that for years Furness was primarily identified as Hugh's spouse and now seeks recognition for her own truth. According to reports, Hugh was aware the book was a possibility and had hoped she would decide against it. People connected to his camp reportedly described the project with what can only be characterized as anxiety about what it might ultimately contain. That reaction is revealing in its own right. A man who spent 27 years making public declarations about his devotion to his wife should theoretically have nothing to fear from her telling her own story. The apparent anxiety about what that story might say speaks volumes about the distance between the public image and the private reality. Whether Deborra-Lee ultimately publishes a memoir or chooses a different path, the record of what she has already said and done tells a coherent and powerful story on its own. She secured the Manhattan penthouse they had shared in her name before she filed a single divorce document. She waited until the right moment to speak, then used the word betrayal in her first public statement. She has continued to respond to the developments around Hugh and Sutton with the kind of quiet precision that carries more weight than any lengthy interview could. Separately, there have been reports from Globe magazine that Hugh himself has expressed regret about how the fallout has played out and has indicated a willingness to take responsibility for his part in the breakdown of their marriage. Sources quoted in that reporting described him as feeling terrible about the bitterness between them and wanting to repair the relationship, at least to the extent that their shared children and ongoing co-parenting make necessary. The same source added that he hoped Deborra-Lee would also be willing to own her part in things, a comment that reads less like a genuine olive branch and more like a conditional one. Their daughter Ava turns 21 this July. Their son Oscar is in his mid-20s. Both of them have reportedly remained loyally close to their mother throughout the separation and divorce. By all accounts, Hugh's primary concern about his relationship with Sutton has been how it affects his children's willingness to accept her as part of their father's life, which suggests the damage to those family bonds has been real, not just tabloid speculation. Hat keeps coming back when you look at the full picture. Deborra-Lee Furness was the one, at the very beginning of this relationship, who could see the risks. She was the one who tried to walk away early. She was the one who said the age gap would create problems, that the pressures would accumulate, that good intentions alone would not be enough. Hugh Jackman was the one who refused to accept that. He was the one who insisted, with what he described as absolute certainty, that none of it mattered. He was the one who proposed within 4 months of them dating. He was the one who made her believe, through 27 years of very public declarations, that his certainty had never wavered. And then he was the one who left. The person who had been afraid to stay turned out not to be the one who walked away. The person who had been most confident this would last, who spoke most loudly and most publicly about the depth of his commitment, is the one who ended it. And Deborra-Lee Furness, the woman who took the risk of believing him all those years ago, is the one left holding the full weight of that. Her word for it, chosen carefully, after nearly 2 years of silence, in the first real statement she allowed herself to make, was betrayal. Not bitterness. Not anger. Betrayal. And if you understand everything she gave across those 27 years, everything she built, everything she set aside, and everything she believed, you understand that there is no more precise word for what happened here. She spent more than half her life proving that this marriage would endure. And now she is doing something she has never really done before, telling her own story, on her own terms, in her own time. After everything else was taken from her, that much, at least, is entirely hers. So here is what we want to know from you. When a person stays silent for nearly 2 years and then speaks with that level of precision, what does that tell you about what they went through? And if Deborra-Lee does write the memoir, if she puts everything she lived through into a book in her own words, is that something she has earned the right to do, or does it cross a line? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this video gave you something to think about, hit like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.